Hello and welcome to another recorded training session for RPMS EHR. My name is Katie Johnson and I am the EHR Integrated Care Coordinator at the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board. Today we will talk about writing notes and using templates. Time for my disclaimer. In all of these recordings, the database that I am using is a scrambled training database. It contains no real patient information. The data may look real, but it is not. Hello everyone, this is the second recording about notes in EHR. This one is focused more on how to write a note and navigate templates and maybe some tips and tricks for you there. So let's get started. To write a note, you typically have your patient selected and your visit location selected, and then you're on the Notes tab. You go to this button down in the left-hand corner called New Note. Now you'll notice that we get this little short list above. If you have this set up, if you don't have anything set up, you might not see anything up here at all, and I'm going to take a minute to show you how to get this favorites list to pop up on the top for you. But you also have access at any time, whether you have a favorites list or not. You have access to all the note titles in your system, and it could be quite extensive depending on your system. There are a couple things you can always search for a note title by typing in a few letters, and it'll take you to that in the alphabetical list here. What can be kind of confusing often is when things show up maybe more than one time and it appears to be the same title. And what's going on there is that it is the same title. It's just that anytime you have a space in a note title, which is often, then it shows up, like for example, this pain agreement rescinded. It's just showing up in different ways on the list and allows you to search it in different ways. Like it'll search the individual word there. I typed in rescinded there and it found the pain agreement rescinded. Same exact note title as if I typed pain and then scrolled to pain agreement rescinded. Same note title. It's just, it does allow you to search it by any of the words in the note title. Some folks use that to the advantage in that it does allow you to search parts of it. Other systems you may see a lot of underscores, the character and underscore in a note title, and the reason they do that is actually to try to avoid how it shows up more than once in the list, because if you're using an underscore in place of a space, then the system sees it as all one word and it doesn't do that. But if you have that case, then you have lost the ability, like if, for example, if this note title were chronic underscore pain underscore refill, you would only be able to find it under chronic, because that would be the actual first few letters of the note title. So I hope that clears up a little bit of confusion if you're wondering why you're seeing things more than once on the list. So now I am going to take a second to show you, I'm going to cancel here and show you how to set up that short list of note titles, because it is very, very helpful. And I think everyone should have that set up. If you go to Tools, up here in EHR, go to Options, and then go over here to Notes. And by the way, I'll do a separate recording just on the general things that you can customize yourself, but I think this note one is particularly important and I wanted to hit it under our notes recording. So I clicked on Notes, And then I'm going to click on document titles. And here, if you remember, these were the two note titles that showed up above the solid line when I clicked on new note. And here I have control over that list. So here on the left is the list of all the note titles in the system. And over here on the right, these are the ones that I want to see most commonly. So usually if you can figure out what your standard note title is that you'd be using for most clinics, depending on what type of user you are, maybe it's a nursing note title, maybe it's a pharmacy note title, whatever it is. Find your note title, then just click on add, and it adds it to the list. Telephone call and chart review note titles, if you have those in your system, those are also usually good ones to add so that you don't have to go looking for them. And the other thing you can do is reorder these with this little up and down arrow. So if you can order them, in your own personal preference order, common ones on the top or whatever, and you can, as you can see, set a default. So this one has the GEN set as the default. If you wanted to change that, you could click on a different note title and select set as default. So I'm just going to say OK there. And this other ability to configure parts about notes, you can play with. I have not done that too much. This is the ability to ask for a subject for the progress note title, and I'll show you where that goes. If you don't want it to prompt you for that, you can unclick that and verifying that that's your note title. The autosave of notes this is a little bit of a misnomer, because anytime you're inside a template, it's not saving your work. So don't have a false sense of security if this is set, or try to set this at a lower interval, because if you're in your template, it's not going to matter. So that's a completely different discussion. Hopefully you're not at a site that has common problems with a EHR losing connection and losing notes, but I'll talk about a little bit different ways to write notes so that you're not spending as much time in a template, and then hopefully maybe you're getting your notes saved if you're at a site that has that problem. If you are in the class of user that requires a cosigner, it's not very common, but there certainly are those situations, such as a student or something like that. If you're in that and you wanted to default, it's always your preceptor or your resident or whomever it is that's always your cosigner. Here's where you could default that. I'm not going to change anything there today. So, okay. So let's see those changes I made. I say new note, and now we can see I've got more note titles up here. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to choose this GEN as my general note title in this system. Normally, you're probably not playing around with the date and time or the author, but if you had a late entry or something, this is where you would change the date and time of the note. You would want to select the visit that, of course, that you were writing on, not if you were truly entering a late note. Make sure you're talking about the correct visit, and then you can adjust the date and time. And that is what shows, again, as we talked about, the date here on the left-hand side in the notes view. And the reason this is okay, that it allows you to do that, is that it's still capturing the real time, what you're really doing. So if I set this date back, then it would reflect that when I'm done with my note as the date of the note up here, but it's still going to capture the entry date as today, and what time I did it, and what time I electronically signed the note down at the bottom. So you can feel comfortable doing that if you need to. And there aren't too many situations where you need to change the author, but this is where you would do it if you had to. So I selected Jen, and I'm going to click OK. So here we are. It has started me off on a blank slate. I've got my note title. Here is that subject. This can be helpful if you're in the habit of using it. If you're not, it's not something that's required, but it can be helpful sometimes. In the other recording, how we talked about searching the text of a note. If you are in the habit of using the subject, then you can keywords, you would be able to find those in the search function. You would also find it in the text of the note, but sometimes the subject can be nice. And here we are with our blank slate. You may have situations where a template automatically pops up associated with a note title, and if you would like that, you can talk to your CAC about it. That's most useful when it's always a certain template that you always use with a certain note title. And sometimes that's not the case with these general visit ones that providers use, but that's very site specific. And I'll show you what something like that might look like just so you can see. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about quick notes too that can save you a few clicks in some situations. But back to just our regular note blank template. So you can just start typing away. And you could write your whole note that way. But as you can see, that could be potentially time consuming and wouldn't necessarily follow a standard format for everybody across the clinic. That would help with reading other people's notes, also helps the coders know where to find information, things like that. So for most cases, it is highly suggested that you use templates. So to access a template, you would come down to this template bar here and click on it. And depending on your site, these can be arranged in any number of ways. In certain folders, you can have certain ones that you like can be under just your My Templates. Your site might not like you to do that. Talk with your CAC about how to get kind of your favorites where you have easy access to them. But once you find the template that you're after, in this example, I'm going to use this one called Short General Exam. There are a few different ways to activate the template. You can either click and drag, and let me show you that opens up the template. So I was just holding down on the mouse button and drag that over into the white space. I can double click on it, achieve the same thing. So once you've got a template that you'd like to start using, you just start clicking on the boxes, and there are different things within the template that work in very different ways, and it's just a little bit of trial and error to see how these things work. So they can be a very click heavy sometimes they're more typing heavy. There are styles that are more of a skeleton of a note, and I'll show you how to pull in individual pieces to that skeleton. This can be very personalized on the style about how you like to write your notes. One thing to point out about templates is that first of all, when you start the template, like I just did here, that's a snapshot of what is documented in the record right now when you start the template. So when I say that, I mean there are certain items that can be pulled into the template. Anything from, like in this instance, the patient's name and age and gender. Here we have the chronic problem list, the IPL. There you can pull in lab results, you can pull in allergies, there are vital signs, there are a huge number of things that can be pulled into the template. The trick on that is that, like I said, the template goes and looks and says what's there right now. So the reason I bring that up is labs. So if a lab result is not back yet when you start the template, it won't be pulled in to the note automatically. If you haven't updated the IPL yet before you write your note, it's not gonna, it'll only pull in what's in there before you write your note. Same thing, medications. If you've ordered your medications before you start your note, then that can be reflected in the note. If you haven't, then it won't be there until you, there are other ways, like I said, we can go back and maybe add some things depending on your work process. The next thing to point out is that templates that have the pre-canned text in here can be great, but also just be very careful and make sure you're reading what's in there and changing things that you need to change, or adding information, or whatever it is that you need to do. And you may run across all sorts of different ways that sites have tackled this, but one important thing is to work with your other, if you're a provider, the other medical staff, to try to agree on what you want as kind of your standard text in there, if you want any in there at all, on things like review of systems and exams and things like that. Because you can work with your CAC or your clinician champion that might be in charge of templates or whoever that is at your clinic, and you can change these. If you can also import ones from other sites. So there's a lot of borrowing and things like that, and sharing, which is great, that goes on between sites. But just the important thing is make sure you're reading these. And I wanted to point out too the difference between this one, where I have access right here. This is one style of making a template here, where I can change something right here if I need to. I wanted to contrast that with this one, where this right now, as I'm going through this template, I can't get up here. I'm clicking in here. I can't get up here to erase something or add something here. They've got a text box here that I can add to, but still I can't erase something. And I'll show you here in just a second how I might go about erasing that. The rest of the click boxes and drop down menus and stuff like that are really just things that you'll kind of have to see as you get to know the templates that are available at your facility. So let's say I got all, I got all the way to the bottom of my note, of my template here, a regular old template. I got all the way to the bottom. I said okay, and here it did. It put the text here in my note. Now at this point, I still have, before I sign it or do anything, I still have access to everything that I just did here. So now I can erase things, add things in, do whatever I need to do to the text of this note. Once I'm happy with my note, I can sign it. And the way I accessed that right there was, one way you can do it is right click, go to sign note now. The other way is to go up here to the hand holding the pen and click on that, and I can sign things. Okay, so there was just a standard note, no hitches. I just went through the template, signed it. So now I'm going to talk about what if you get interrupted, or what if you like to do your note in parts. So I'll show you how you can do that. Oh, and at the same time I want to address two other common things that come up about notes. So in general, except in special situations. In general, the things that you put in your note here are just text. They're not structured data. So that's probably one of the really common questions that you get, is you might say, oh, something in here. You might type in your note, a patient had colonoscopy 5 years ago. Well, that's great information to put in your note, but it's just text if you put it there. If you don't also document it in a spot that is the structured data, and by that I mean it has a spot for, you're putting in the information in like one of these other sections that asks you for the information, then it's not going to get picked up by a reminder, for instance, or a GIPRA report, or anything like that. So the documenting things like education, historical events for the patient, it's all very important to do in places other than the note. And so that's one of the big things to work through about how things get documented and how you do it in a way that's efficient, and the information gets captured, and who's responsible for documenting what pieces. So back on the Notes tab, there's that. The other thing is, you'll notice, so let's start another new note. So once you're in a template, and then you think, oh wait, I did mean to order that lab, or you get interrupted, you're in the middle of the template and something comes up where you need to go and look at another patient's chart, or there are any number of reasons why you might want to get out of a template. Because, as you notice here, if I have a template started here, all I can do is kind of move it around, but I can't get back to EHR here to switch tabs. So that is, if you're brand new to EHR, that can be something that's tough to get worked into your workflow, is knowing that once I've started that template, I'm stuck for right now. So that's why one thing is we kind of try to teach folks generally to work left to right across your tabs through your visit, if that fits your personal workflow. Because by doing that, you've got most of your stuff already documented by the time you get to the note. The note might be the last thing that you do. If that doesn't work for your style, then now we're going to talk about other ways to do things. So say I started my note, I talked to the patient, did some of my things in here, and boom, I need to leave my note for whatever reason it is. So I'm in my template, I can just say, okay. Now here we are kind of on pause. Now I can right click here and say save without signature. So now we've got an unsigned note sitting there that's not complete. Now I can go and I can switch patients, or I can go order something, I can go review whatever I needed to do. Or I just am saving it because I like to save little chunks of my note instead of getting one big long note before I save it. Is that all these are kind of personal preferences. So I've gotten this far. Say, okay, I'm ready to keep going on my note, but I'd sure like to have my template back to do that. We can do that. So the way to get back into your note is that you have to, you might think you're ready to go and you start to type and nothing's happening and you get a little bit worried what's going on, but here's the part that people forget. You just need to right click and say I'm ready to edit my progress note again. So once I do that, now it dropped me back into I can start typing. But at this point, I'm like, no, I want my template back. So you can sure do that. You can go grab your template. And this again is a very personal thing about how your style, about how you want to do your note. You can either, at this point, to jump back into your template will drop in where your cursor is in your notes. So there is my cursor right there. I can either drag this over here and open up the full template again. I'll show you what that looks like. And in this template, I could say, okay, I pulled up my full template, but I'm going to skip the parts that I'd already done, and I'm going to pick up again right here at the objective and just keep going as if I hadn't missed a beat. And I say okay, and as you can see, it just dropped it in there right where my cursor had been. Another way to do this is, and again, working with your CAC on how your templates are structured, but you could even have distinct parts of your template called part 1 and part 2 or something like that. There's a number of ways to do it, but you can also open up your template and go directly to say, okay, I know I've done the subjective and objective, now I'm ready for the assessment. So I can dive straight to there, pull that over, and here I am right in the assessment part. And I can say okay, and then I can say, okay, now I'm ready for my plan. And I go in there and do the plan part. So some people like that, to have it very separated out and have maybe just a full skeleton, a very minimal skeleton of a structure of a note, and then just pull in individual pieces as they go. So that's another style of writing a note. But some of those are a little bit more advanced. If you're brand new, you might want to start out just writing your template and knowing that if something happens, knowing how to get back into it. But once you get a little more familiar with your templates, then maybe start playing around with different ways that might fit your workflow. Like I said, maybe it helps you to do the chief complaint and the active and problems and the subjective, and then go and place your lab orders or your med orders, and then go and bring in the assessment and the plan, or whatever it is that meets your needs. Just wanted to give you some different ways to approach note writing. So once I'm finally done, again, I'm going to sign this, and I can either do it by right-clicking or by going to the signature tool. Okay, now I've got a signed note, and that is solidified. Nobody can change that, including you. It's been signed, stamped. It's a secure electronic document now, and it's done. One thing to note about the if you have a note that you've saved without signature and you do go over to order medications or labs or something else, when you go to sign it, it will offer you the chance to sign your note as well as whatever labs or meds you've ordered. So just be aware of that, and if you're not ready to sign your note, you can uncheck that box. Let me see if I can demonstrate that for you here. So let's say I've got a note going. And I say, okay, wait, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to save it without a signature. So I'm going to order a lab. And then say I'm ready to sign that. I use the signature tool. Just be aware that this under documents is my note. So sometimes we accidentally get that signed. The way, if I really just want to sign my lab order, so you can see I can click and unclick that box. And here I'm just signing only my lab order, leaving my note still unsigned. That is one word of caution. But if you accidentally do sign your note before you're done, you can always keep adding to it. It's not as smooth and pretty as it is if you remember that you want to add something to it before you sign your note. But the way you add to a note is by making an addendum. And again, that's the only way to add to a signed note. For whatever reason, whether it was that you forgot something, or it's new information, or you're another member of the healthcare team that wants to add something onto the note, that making the addendum is the only way to do that, and that does not change anything that is in the signed note that's already done. So I make an addendum, and here we go with a blank slate again. I can free text, I can use templates, I can do any of those things, and then I can sign that. And then as we see, it shows as this note has an addendum, and as we read it down from the top, like I said, it will have a break in it with your signature block, and then a new header that says it's an addendum. So if you're hoping for one smooth note, if you forgot something, it doesn't quite work that way, but it does get the information on the note. So one other option for writing notes is this quick note button. And again, this is getting with your clinical application coordinator if you think these would be helpful for you. They're most helpful when you have a certain kind of note that you write all the time. So again, like a lot of screening things, a lot of maybe pharmacy refill type things, all these things that might happen over and over, but maybe it's a well child clinic or whatever it might be. The advantage to these is that you can go straight here to the quick notes, and it can, and double click on it, starts your note, pulls up your template. It can establish a visit if needed to, like a chart review visit, whatever that may be. It can definitely save you some clicks, so just to be aware of that. I'm going to cancel out of this right now and delete it. The last thing I wanted to talk about are these special cases. Oh, first I wanted to show what it looks like, if you have a template associated with a note title. So in this system, we were, like, again, just a test system. If I click my chart review note, it automatically brought up this template called Happy Birthday. So that's just how, if you know that you're always using a template with a note title, it can save you a few clicks to associate it. And your clinical application coordinator can do that for you. But if you ever realize, actually, that's not the template I want to use, no big deal. If it's already associated, you just close out of it, and you're back to your blank slate and can go choose whatever template you want. So one final note about the templates is, remember I said there were some specialized templates that can help you save you some clicks and get some structured data from your template into the other areas of EHR. And these are called reminder dialog templates. A few sites have taken it further and done some other regular note templates and made them as dialogues, but they're recognizable because they have this, in the context of reminders, they have this little square in front of the alarm clock. So they're, like I said, they're most commonly seen associated with reminders, but you may see them in other places as well that are not associated with reminders. These are much more time intensive to build, and you have different options as far as formatting and what you can do as the author of the template to give to the users. But I want to show you why these are really nifty. And let's see. So let's just take a look at for example, the alcohol screen one. I'm going to double click on it, and here we have a template. But as you see, as I'm going along to do this screen, some of this is just text. Some of it then is actually recording data. And the way that I can tell this, if I'm not that familiar with it, is see the look of this template is different because it has these two little boxes down at the bottom. This box here is showing you what is coming out as text, and anything that's actually going in as structured data here is going in this bottom box. So we can see that it documented the alcohol screening right here. Even though I was in a note template, I'm in one of these special dialog templates. So if I were in a normal template, it would not also be capturing this data elsewhere in EHR. It would only be capturing it in the note. So just to give you an idea of that, another example of a dialog that can be very useful is something that might need an order done. So this one is just pulling in the most recent lipid profile. It's not showing a record of one in this case. I'm going to order one, and you can see it's got the order here, and as soon as I say finish, it's going to pop up the order for the lab test that you've specified that when your CAC or whomever did the setup for this one. So that's another place that I can be really helpful to save you some time between navigating different tabs. You're able to do a few things at once right here from the Notes tab using these special dialog templates. The reason I wanted to point that out is because it can be very useful, but also to understand the difference so that you know when you are kind of doing getting things documented in one place and when you're not, and also maybe get the wheels spinning in your mind about ways that you could ask to use a dialog template that might be helpful to your site. You are limited on the number of things that are available to input through the dialog templates, but the list is growing, and we're finding ways to hopefully incorporate more things into this. So I'm going to sign this now, and we will go and we will see. And I'm going to go ahead and sign the lab order, and we'll go over to the wellness tab just to point out that was that alcohol screening that I did right there from the notes. The dialog template is showing up here on the exams tab as structured data, so that's counting for GIPRO or the reminder or whatever it might be that you're looking for there. So I believe that covers everything I wanted to cover on writing notes. Thank you for listening.